días. Buenos días. The mic isn't on. Okay, there, okay, yeah. Buenos días. Queremos reconocer los pueblos originarios, los pueblos Mapuche, Aymara, Diaguita, Rapunui, Atacameño, Quechua, Coya, Chango, Cahuesca y Yagán. Gracias.
Gracias. Thank you.
Muchas
So,
gracias.
let me tell you our plan today. In a number of our past conferences, we've had a session that was especially designed for new directors to share thoughts of those of us who've been directors anywhere from a year to, in my case, almost 15 years. And so this is our shift to a panel discussion so you can hear from lots of center directors about their early on experiences. We have about 40 minutes left in our session, and we'll be careful about staying on time. So what we'll do, and I should have said, though it's directed toward new directors, it's become a session that people all want to come to because we all know how much we have to learn, and I would say about leadership in the humanities more broadly. So thank you all for being here, wherever your location otherwise. We'll introduce ourselves and our centers very quickly, and then we're going to start off with a few questions that the panel will discuss. And if time allows, we welcome you to weigh in. I did not remember to do this, but I'll bet that Aaron could miraculously do it for us now. Aaron, would it be hard for you to create a quick Google Doc and send it out? And send it out on the, the chat? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you'll get a note shortly from Aaron with a Google Doc, and if, as you listen today and throughout the session, if there are tips you would like to share with new directors or programs you would like to share, we can use that Google Doc to accumulate suggestions so that things we don't have time for in the conversation have a place to go to share great ideas. So, as I said, I'm Teresa Mangum. I am the director at the Obermann Center for Advanced Studies at the University of Iowa. My own disciplines are English and Gender, Women's, Sexuality Studies. And I will turn things over to my fellow panelists.
Good morning. I'm Bianet Castellanos. I am the director of the Institute for Advanced Study at the University of Minnesota, and I was trained as an anthropologist, but I teach in American Studies, and I also work on Indigenous Studies and Latinx Studies.
Hello, neighbor. My name is Serenity. I'm the director at the University of Manitoba Institute for the Humanities. That is in Canada, right on top of Minnesota. Our institute is on treaty land as well, the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dene, and Dakota peoples, and also we are located on the heartland of the Métis Nation. My home department is the Department of English, Film, Theater, and Media. And it's really nice to be here today. I have a mask on because I'm not feeling too well, so please forgive that.
Great. Can you hear me? Is this working? No? Okay, I can hold the room. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. My name is Cristina Stanciu. I'm an associate professor of English at Virginia Commonwealth University, where I also direct the Humanities Research Center. I just submitted my dossier for full professor before I came here, so entering a new stage. I have done this job fairly early in my career, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I've been on this job for about 2.5 years. The center I direct is 9 years old, and last year it became a university-wide research center. My areas are Indigenous and multi-ethnic literatures and visual culture. Thank you.
Thank you all. And you should have just gotten the ping from Aaron with the Google Doc, so as you listen, if you want to add programs or suggestions from your position, go for it. We thought we'd start today with a broad question about leadership. One of the things that I find the most inspiring about the position of being a center director is that you're not an administrator, you're really an intellectual leader. And that means many things, many of which we are not prepared for when we step into these jobs. Well, some of you have been department chairs, associate deans, so you've had that opportunity, but many of us are learning how to lead in the humanities by doing. So we hope to spare you some of our hard lessons. So I'll start by asking the panelists, How have you come to understand your role as a leader in the humanities rather than only your role as a center leader? And what are concrete ways that you've stepped into that role? Anybody want to start?
I can go ahead and start. The IAS is actually an interdisciplinary center that is system-wide. So we have 4 campuses that we're working with. And my predecessors, it first started out as being part of the College of Liberal Arts, and then it moved out of the college and is now under the provost's leadership. And so one of the mandates that I came in, given the history of the IAS, that it came out of the humanities and then moved outward, was to think about how we connect to STEM. But one of the things that I've realized in this past year, I became a director in September, is that our strength is the humanities. And so thinking about how then our relationship to STEM is coming through a humanity-centered focus. And so to be able to build on that and strengthen that is really important, in part because I think that's one of the ways that we're able to translate the humanities to a broader public, and which is really important. There is a huge emphasis on STEM, nationwide, and so thinking about how we, as humanities scholars, can build a bridge that allows folks to see that relationship is really important. One of the ways that we're doing that is thinking about, for example, we have a Human in the Data series of conversations. We have undergrad fellows and grad fellows who come in and participate in that. And the goal is to think about how we think about data and think about the humanities-centered questions around data, not the other way around, right? And so I think that's really part of what we're trying to do, is to build that bridge. I think it's really important to be able to remind folks of why the humanities is so important. I think that's a challenge, and we see that daily in politics in terms of how our universities are funded. So I think that's really the important work that we're doing in the humanities.
I think one of the things, this word leader, I was very uncomfortable with this word because it seems so hierarchical and strange. But I did get some good advice early on, especially for women and racialized people, that you have to embrace that power and not shirk away from it. So it's been a while. I've been at my institute for this is my 5th year, then my 5th year. We have a rotating academic directorship, so it will be my last year next year. And our institute is 30 years old. 30 years old, with a very, very modest budget. Adding on to what Bianet said about leader as a bridge builder, I also think when I think of the word leader, like it has to do with having a very firm vision of what you want to achieve during your tenure, whether you want to focus on public humanities, whether you want to focus on enriching your faculty or your college, whether you want to create a certain new image for your institute. I think having a firm vision is actually really important, because if you don't and you go in thinking, let me just feel it out and see what I can do, then you'll end up replicating the institution. It'll just kind of suck you in, and you'll just be doing the things that have always been done. For me, one of the things, absolutely, I supported faculty across our faculty members across our faculty, that's what we call colleges in Canada, for all sorts of humanities research on campus. One of the other things that I really wanted to do is, and that includes advocating, so supporting means advocating as well, always convincing everyone, my mom, what the humanities is, different deans, different provosts, what the humanities is and what the humanities are and what they can do. But the other word I would like to throw in there as well, which is very similar, is collaborating, especially with off-campus communities, and to think about how to make those connections. And for me, the concrete ways I did this is, one, I threw money at organizations that I believed in that were doing good work. I figured out a way to pay them, and I showed up to their events. That's how for me, that was how I built the trust that was necessary for us to then start actually collaborating. I think, institutions are skeptical places for a lot of people in the community, and for me to show up and say, we've never funded a DJ for an event before, but I'm going to figure out how to do that because that's an important part of this event, that it's a certain type of DJ that spins certain type of music. We're going to get catered from this place because that's where you want to get catered from, not Airmark, which is where we usually do our catering. So those are the ways in which I think that I've been able to be a certain type of leader that I wanted to be, that perhaps is not the goal of the larger university mandate proper. Perhaps it is. And just a small concrete thing, there was a Two-Spirit LGBTQA library that was being formed by community members. And I built relations with them, and we ran book clubs and all of this. And one of the things that they asked is that they very blatantly said they wanted our money, but they didn't want our name, the university's name on the little panels that we bought for the books. And I said, okay. And then that enabled us to kind of make more actual events and programming that actually reached the members that they wanted to. So that's, I don't know if that's strange advice, but in one way, step into your power, and then, not to sound like Spider-Man, but use your power for greatness in ways that are ethically and socially important to you.
That's great, thank you. I have my mic here, so thank you. Is this still working? So this is a very good question that I'm still trying to figure out how to answer. Hello, Sylvester. I have been out of grad school for 12 years only and thrown into this position 2.5 years ago. So I had to learn how to negotiate imposter syndrome and other syndromes. So because our universities is heavily STEM, as you mentioned, we have pockets of excellence in arts and humanities. So I think one of the first things I did as new director was to invite Sylvia Miller from FHI to come to campus and lead a charrette with our faculty members, our board members, and then get buy-in from the Office of Research. And that was fantastic because it really gave us the momentum to build on. In terms of, attending CHCI last year, I think was one of the most illuminating leadership experiences, and then just, writing to Jen or Teresa and getting informal advice from this wonderful network, attending the webinars during the pandemic, have also been crucial in understanding, the nuts and bolts as a baby administrator, which is what I think I am. One of the challenges that I think we negotiated quite successfully, I'm very lucky to have an advisory board, the faculty advisory board, very supportive from across the university. We were almost obliterated as a center when a previous dean was hired, and during the pandemic, she almost disappeared the humanities. So when I stepped into this position, my role was to revive the humanities, which I did, and then we became a university center after about 1.5 years. So now the challenge is to evangelize for the humanities to the STEM and Office of Research constituencies. So one of the challenges of this leadership model, or navigating this leadership model, is to not just translate the humanities for STEM. I don't think this is what we want to do, although I think this is an important issue, but really to make humanities disciplines and methods and ways of being in the world central to the life of the university. And as a leader, my main goal before I drop the mic at the end of my second term is to have our president, when he refers to the humanities, refer to the Humanities Research Center, not the brand center, which is our advertising. So I'm really invested in this idea of not just translating the humanities, right, to STEM and instrumentalizing the humanities for other purposes, but really making the humanities central to discussions about human crises in the world that all our administrators like to talk about. So I'll stop here, and in the next question, I'm going to be more specific about initiatives we've taken.
And just to add, respond to Serenity's very good point about how often people in the humanities are uncomfortable with the word leadership. I've been working on developing a workshop for an ACLS Women in Leadership session that's coming up very soon, and reading a lot of work around feminist theories of leadership. And one of the things I found fascinating is a number of the feminist sociologists and business people who work on the topic are shifting to using the word leading rather than leadership, to really focus on the process and what we'll talk about next, in part collaboration. I'll add to what the panelists have said here, that one of the things I learned early on was that my real job was relationship building. And I think you've heard that in everyone's comments so far. And so, as I mentioned at this session last year, one of the accidentally smartest things I did that first year was to set up a monthly coffee with other leaders of strange things on my campus. So the museum director, the public policy director, the art museum, the libraries, people in the digital studio, and just that simple act of 90-minute coffees once a semester has led to amazing collaborations. And I think a lot of what we do in centers that is under-recognized and could not be valued highly enough is convening incredible conversations, which are sometimes across campus and sometimes with community members and sometimes, as here, nationally. But what I really have tried to educate my colleagues, my board, and people who participate in the center, that one of the things people in the humanities bring to any table is usually great skill as a facilitator. And that is a very rare skill on a campus. And I would say that our center, also interdisciplinary, has become as well known, though people don't know what the secret sauce is. And then it's not just me, others that I've trained in facilitation or worked with to get them training, so that they just know when they come to a conversation at the Oberlin Center, things are going to happen. And they're going to leave with a new set of friends and relationships. And I just think that's such a huge part of what we do in the short and long term. So on that theme, and given our time, what are some of the programs and initiatives you've created, or your center has created, that you've seen be especially effective, and how?
Well, I've only been in my job for about 9 months, but I can talk about, we have what we're known for is our residential fellows program, because it really is an opportunity. It's an internal program. It's not, we don't have any external fellows. Occasionally we do get some folks who spend time with us, but it's focused on grad students and faculty, and they really do build a sense of community and conversation. We meet weekly to talk about, everybody gets to present on their work, and it's in those conversations that people realize why we consciously put them together. Because when we get great people applying to our program, it's just an issue of figuring out, who's going to spark conversations amongst each other, right? Like how are we going to stimulate a sense of cohesion and community? And so I think that's one of the gems of our program. And what we're also trying to do is, when Serenity was talking about having a vision, that was something that my staff really talked to me about, like the idea of what is our vision for the coming year. I had big shoes to fill. I stepped in after Rand Waltner and Jennifer Gunn, who were fantastic leaders. And so thinking about what is it that I bring to the table. And at the IAS, our vision for this year is racial justice, which is critically important in a place where George Floyd was murdered. Community engagement, also critically important because we have had very extractivist relationships with our local communities and partners, and so thinking about how we can change those relationships, and also thinking about expanding our engagement internationally. And we have faculty who do amazing work, but we haven't really catalyzed those relationships or thought about the IAS more globally. So that's part of coming here is really exciting for us. And so one of the things that we inaugurated this year, and there are some challenges to it, is we decided to put together a community fellows program. And so in the past, we've had community fellows who are not paid, who were just artists in residence, and would spend time with us. And so this year we were able to get money to pay a community fellow who was working in partnership with one of our residential fellows. And that's the goal, is to have a residential fellow who brings a community partner, and they get to spend a semester on our campus. And we're hoping that through that relationship, we will actually transform the ways that our community partners think about the university. And so it was a great experience. There were a lot of challenges to it. And so I'm happy to talk, about that. But that's one of the ways that we are trying to envision how we can take our resources and be able to share them with partners in ways that are much more equitable, and that also acknowledge that our, community members are they are experts in their area of, they're in lots of different topics, and how we can then be able to give them access to the university so that they can continue to do that work with more resources. And so that's been part of what we've been doing this year.
Thank you. I love that idea so much. I'll have to pick your brain for logistically how you pulled that off. That's amazing. For us, we're such a small institute. And the last the last 5 years have been COVID. So I've done a lot of pivoting the last 4 years. We have some things in the works, but the biggest engine for us as an institute are our research clusters. So we fund, a cluster of folks in the humanities. We have our requirement is that there's one faculty member that's in the Faculty of Arts, and then we ask for graduate students, undergrads, faculty across the university and other universities in our city, as well as community members to participate in thematic research clusters that they have. And there is a practical sense to this because we are such a small institute that does become our core programming. And then, me and our one staff person are here to kind of, they create the ideas and then we're here to kind of execute them and make them bigger and shinier, perhaps. A few of the other things that we're doing on campus specifically, we have weekly write-on sites where we get together, and that's also community building. I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Teresa, that everything's about making relations, where people come with their projects and we just write in silence. This year we have, for the first time in this, I know other institutes do this, a first book workshop where we have junior faculty members come in and we fly in people to read their book manuscript over for them to prepare for publication. And one of the things I want to do at the end of this year on campus is, or on and off campus is, we can't call it a summer institute because that name has been taken by a different art gallery in town, so I think I'm just going to call it Nerd Camp and tell it like it is. And that's one of the bigger initiatives I want to kind of leave behind, a place, just a weekend, even 2-3 days, where we bring in speakers and community members, students, and have a lot of good food and talk about ideas. All the things that you thought university was going to be.
Serenity, this is wonderful. A lot of things I won't repeat, just to reiterate the power of right on site for building community and the power of bringing food to all these meetings, especially work in progress meeting. And I really love this idea of a first book workshop. We started doing second book or third book for mid-career faculty members, and that has been also useful. I wanted to go back to the idea of themed years, and just to mention that when I started, the first year and a half for us was dedicated to race, ethnicity, and social justice. And under that umbrella, because we didn't have a land acknowledgement at the time, a faculty working group at the university, at our center, started, some agitation for work towards not just a land acknowledgement and work with local indigenous communities, but also recommendations to the university. So fast forward a couple of years, this April, after co-chairing a task force on land acknowledgement, we submitted a report to the provost where we not only suggested language for land acknowledgement, but also a series of recommendations for building a Native Studies program, for hiring a director, for hiring faculty. So I think this has been one of my most meaningful initiatives, and our own Native Ground initiative continues with visits from local indigenous speakers. We sponsor Pocahontas Film Festival, which is in its 7th year this year, the only Native film festival on the East Coast, and a lot of other projects with the local indigenous communities. We have a bi-weekly event called Meet VCU Authors. We have started doing these presentations virtually because we just found the audience would be more, our attendance was actually increasing. So our authors have 1 hour to pitch their project, and then we spend about 15 minutes doing Q&A. And at the end of each semester, we try to do a book celebration or invite authors and celebrate that. Our audience at the beginning of the spring semester, virtual audience, was up to 200. Which was quite an increase from previous semesters, so we continue to do this virtually. I'd like to end with a new initiative we started last year, which is a model I borrowed from FHI last year. We were at Duke at the CHCI conference, and because our campus is so STEM-oriented, the model of a humanities lab is something that has really persuaded our administrators that this is a good model to invest resources in. So last year we started 2 labs, which have become enormously successful. They just exceeded all my expectations in environmental humanities and health humanities. And so they bring together between 55 and 70 faculty members from across campuses. The School of Medicine has participated heavily in the health humanities lab. It was really gratifying to see a philosopher speak to a business faculty member and to an environmental studies professor on issues such as play, right, and the importance of slowing down and rethinking productivity. This year we're launching 5 more labs, and I'll be happy to report on this next year. But I think I would be interested for those in hearing more about this in conversations after this session about the value of reproducing the STEM model in the humanities and the possibilities that such a model offers for humanities. So.
Thank you all, and I'll just add quickly from our space, one of the things I'm always thinking about, and I suspect that's true of many of you, is strategy. And so part of my strategy is I'm always looking for what is a program that is very low cost and high impact. What is a program that will require more resources, be very focused and targeted, but that I think could really affect people in a deep way. And then in the middle, I'm always aware of funded external opportunities, deeply grateful to our Mellon friends who are here for the Sawyer Seminar, for example. We just had an amazing year on race, comics, and reconciliation, thanks to the generosity of the Mellon Foundation. So to give you a quick example of what I mean, our low-hanging fruit program is just called Obermann Working Groups. And we offer people $1,000 a year for a group that has at least 6 people across disciplines that is willing to meet not an hour, but 90 minutes 3 times a semester. And we now have almost 40 such groups. We serve almost 300 people a year. They're led by faculty or faculty and grad students, but they sometimes have community partners. They have people all across campus. And it's probably had the largest quiet impact of anything we've done because of the way it's brought people together across campus. Only about 1/3 of the groups even use the money, which makes my staff colleagues very happy. The other example, the other extreme of the more expensive focused program is whenever I see opportunities to collaborate, for example, with the office I report to, the Office of the Vice President for Research, on a special project, I'll go for it if faculty are interested. And so this year we're going to have a design session in which we're treating the campus as a lab for climate change, to study climate. And for the first time ever, we've brought together the people who run the facilities on campus with faculty leaders interested in environmental studies. And it has changed everything in the way we're talking about what could be done. We'll have a day where we're bringing in a wonderful person, Leslie Ann Noel, who is a user X kind of designer whose focus is on race and equity. And she'll lead us through our design cycles after we've had possible projects presented by the facilities folks with the faculty members who've started to get interested in those particular projects. And then we'll go through the design cycle. So the goal was not only to have a year of work using campus as a lab, as a model that will have implications for changes on campus, for faculty to realize what a resource staff members are in their areas of expertise on campus, for a broad number of faculty and grad students to learn how to use the design cycle process with equity questions built into it, and how to work with stakeholders to clarify their research goals. So I think a lot of us are working in these strategic ways, and I hope throughout the conference we can be sharing ideas about that. We only have about 10 more minutes, so maybe the last question I'll ask is, what is the best advice you've gotten about how to make the experience of directing a center meaningful for you and for your campus?
I mean, for me, when I started in September, I began with COVID. So I was sick for about 6 weeks, and I was also chairing. I've been chairing this past year as well as directing, so chairing my own department. So I think the advice that I received was to one, to take it slow, and to, really, to not make too many changes too quickly, to take your time, right? Because you're coming in as a new director, you want to put your stamp on things, but at the same time, there's at least Jennifer Gunn left me with a great center and great programming. And so the one thing that I did is before I started my position is I met with all my staff individually to talk to them about what they saw were the challenges and the great things about working at the center. And so then that way it gave me a sense of sort of where we were coming from. And so one of the things we realized is we were doing a lot. So for the coming year, we're scaling back some of our programming so that we can actually, because all of our events the majority of our events are hybrid, is so that we can continue to offer quality programming in that way. And also, our programming is really set up to not be the traditional, somebody gives a lecture. It's really to be about more of a conversation along the lines of like public radio. And so that takes a lot of work, a lot of investment from our staff to be able to pull off programming where people, presenters meet beforehand, like 2 or 3 weeks beforehand. They talk about what kinds of conversations they're going to have. They ask each other questions. And so there's a lot of preparation in building up our programming in that way. So I think taking things slow, realizing that you've inherited something that's, bigger than you, but at the same time, as you want to shape it, it's okay to see what it's, to figure out what the rhythm of the calendar is before you then step in to make interventions, because making change too quick can be really hard, right? And at the same time, you also want to recognize that there is, there's really tremendous work that's already being done. You don't want to, you want to let your staff show you sort of how things work, and also so you learn like what their skills are, because like my staff are amazing. Like I've been able to chair and direct because I have amazing staff. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And so to give them the space to for me to know, now I know what their strengths are, and then how we can then take the coming year to build on those strengths. And I think that's important to not be sort of like you're brought in to change and disrupt, but to do it in a way that's strategic. I think that's really important. And also that's, cognizant of the fact that you're a person, and your mental health and physical health really matter. And so that's like, starting off being sick was a way for me to say, okay, I don't think I need to do all that stuff. It's okay just to let things run and then see how things work. And then I can step in with, thinking about how the kinds of ideas that we might like to embrace collectively as a center, and also in conversation with our faculty. I think that's really important.
I agree with you in this idea of pacing yourself. Universities run very slow, as we know. One of the things is, sometimes you just have to take the L and say, pushing paper is my job today. This is how I'm earning my job. I'm emailing all day today. This is how I'm earning my wage today. So pacing yourself for all sorts of reasons, I think, is very important. Like I said before, having a vision and a strategy for that beforehand, for me, has worked very, very well as a very small institute that has a very low profile. And I was like, that's great. I can do all sorts of things. In a concrete way, I really wanted to center BIPOC and QPOC voices in all sorts of ways. And that was something that also helped me figure out who I wanted to work with and who I didn't want to work with. You know, there were places where they're like, oh, we might bring in 1 or 2, you know, racialized speakers this year with your help. And I said, I don't want to work with you. Like, I want to work with people because, sorry, this is getting to the advice part, but as many of you probably know this, without centering the specific voices that you want to, they will get drowned out, right? They will always get drowned out. You have to center them and have all programming as the mandate, or else you'll have 1 or 2 at the end of the year and think you did a great job, but then actually, in all of this. The other, I guess, small thing in terms of valuable advice that I learned from my prior director, who I adored, is that just remember, remember that no one knows what they're doing, and then take advantage of that. The university will not always be on your side, of course, as we know, even for the most amazing creative endeavors that you have, but they also don't know what they're doing. And so to be creative, think about creative and innovative programming and opportunities, and trust that no one in the room knows what they're doing. And again, like stepping into that energy or stepping into that power actually works really well, because asking sometimes administrators, do you think this is a good idea, is probably the worst way to go around trying to create interesting programming. So to remember that no one knows what they're doing, it would be my words.
Oh, these are wonderful ideas. How do you follow that? I remember a conversation with Antoinette Burton about a week into my new role, and what she advised was first get to know Teresa really well, and then join the CHCI and the NAH, which I did. So I think this is really valuable to give me an education into the possibilities and to imagine what's possible as I was trying to pick up the pieces and rebuild the center that used to be. The second piece of advice I really valued was to start a newsletter, which I wouldn't have thought of on my own. And so it has become very popular. Now it goes out to thousands of local and national and international viewers or readers. And I'm really glad I did that. Nobody advised me to bring Sylvester to campus, but bringing him this year in April during our research weeks was probably one of the best decisions I have made, because you know him, he's charming, and he also charmed our administrators who were in the room listening to him about why the humanities should be central to universities, not peripheral. And my VP for, part of the reason why I'm in this position is that my VP for research, to whom I report, is a wonderful immunologist who also values the humanities and who has come to Germany with me when I organized an international symposium at the Obama Institute last year, because he wanted to learn. And that gives me a lot of hope about the future of the center. And the last thing I'll say, other useful pieces of advice, like building a supportive board that will support my vision for the center. Don't be afraid to advocate. My imposter syndrome comment comes back again, because I think coming into this leadership role is also coming into my voice as both a scholar, as an administrator, as I try to negotiate them both and also prioritize my scholarship, which for me was very important. I found the strategic partnerships with everyone on campus, and what Teresa mentioned about the 5x5s, we call them 5x5s, but those low-hanging fruit investments have proved to be so crucial to establishing those partnerships, right? We have almost 15 groups now emerging from that in the last 2.5 years, and they're growing. But really inserting ourselves into all the possible committees on campus, having faculty be present, be in the room when the decisions are made. So we are now part of the Research Strategic Priorities Committee. We have leadership roles, my associate director and I. And just keeping the pulse, having access to the provost, having quarterly meeting with the provost has been one of those advocacy outcomes. So I think I'll stop here. But Yeah, thank you to everyone who has offered advice in the last 2.5 years, and I'm looking forward to paying it forward.
And we are right at time. As I hope the panel has suggested, part of the great pleasure of being part of CHCI is meeting so many amazing people experimenting with programs. I've thought a lot about collective membership in many contexts, especially CHCI, and how I feel as mentored by my brand new, more junior colleagues as I do by wonderful senior colleagues who've helped me with this position. So thank you all for being here. Remember, the Google Doc is available if you want to add your own programs, and let's thank the panelists for a great discussion.